Gen Z, what is up? Gen Z, what is up? My name is Saadiq Spears, and it is not a podcast, man. Episode 16. It is not a podcast. It is a show where we bring the most pertinent topics pertaining to Gen Z, whether that's within politics, business, or media. The idea is to help y'all be perceptive to what? Build perspective. Okay. Listen, we got a slew of topics to get to. One, I went to a speaking engagement last week, 11/11. It was a great event. I want to talk about it. Two, the government shutdown has ended. Those 8 Democrats that voted against it, or 7 Democrats and 1 independent that voted to end the government shutdown. We're going to talk about that. The 50-year mortgages that's being proposed and the 15-year car loan mortgages and stuff like that's being proposed. $2,000 dividend tariff checks that hasn't even gone through as policy or hasn't been proposed as policy. There's so much things to talk about. What else? Oh, I told you I'm going to do a deep dive into Sudan, and we're going to do that today as well. So we have a slew of topics to get to, and I want to be efficient. So let's get straight into the government shutdown. I hope y'all weeks have been good. Of course, put that in the comments. And if you have any questions or topics you want me to cover, of course, throw that into the comments. And give us a like, subscribe, and a little post notification bell so you know when we're dropping. Yes. It is not a podcast, man. It's a show. Hopefully it's not too much light. Whatever. We're going to go straight into it. So listen, the government shutdown, the Democrats have folded, which means 7 Democrats. In order to pass the bill to end the government shutdown, 7 Democrats need to vote it, and then also 1 independent voter has turned it. Now, what does this mean? This means that what the Democrats have been holding up the shutdown for, which means that a bill can't get passed until they decide to vote for it, or a couple decided to vote for it, is that they wanted to make sure that there would be Affordable Care Act subsidies placed into that bill, because that's what was removed in the Big Beautiful Bill, right? So they wanted to make sure that thousands of Americans were protected under that Affordable Care Act, but just making sure that their medical costs does not skyrocket. So what happened from these 7 Democrats? They said, oh, we can't take it too long. The furloughed workers, et cetera, et cetera. The shutdown is causing too much pain. We're going to go vote against our party and vote against it. Now, a lot of people are going to call that traitors, right? Because that might just look like crocodile tears, et cetera, because I come to find out all of those senators, all those people that voted, and I'm going to get to their names, are not up for re-election next year, right? So they're protected, which is a little bit interesting, in I guess, which ones decided to vote against that bill. But whatever, sidestep. Why would they vote for it, right? Like, Democrats have had the upper hand in the last couple of weeks, right, when it comes to the mayor race with NYC, or it comes to, Virginia, and it comes to Prop 50 that passed in California, and it comes to New Jersey. There's actually no real reason for these Democrats and this one independent to go vote for that, other than keeping the status quo. And I think that's the biggest problem when it comes to a lot of established Democrats. But even though a bunch of Democrats didn't vote for this, but we have a problem. Well, the Democratic Party has a problem with just non-party alignment, and this is a perfect example. And this just goes and leads credence to the people that say, "Man, why vote anyway? Why do I care?" Right? Like, this is a huge another example about some Democrats that are part of the party that do not fight for the party. Perfect example. And I think we should all vote them out. I'm going to say their names. Actually, let me say their names right now just to get it out the way. So first name, Tim Kaine, Virginia Senator. Second name, Jane Shaheen, New Hampshire Senator. Maggie Hassan, New Hampshire Senator. Catherine Cortez Masto, Nevada Senator. John Fetterman, Pennsylvania. Jackie Rosen, Nevada. Dick Durbin, Illinois. Angus King. Doesn't even matter. Angus King. Those are the people that voted against, which are some problems. Now, this I'll talk about the giving credence to the people that say, why even vote? Voting does not matter. This just does not matter. Listen, the way that I think about it is that voting and the political apparatus is really 10% of the amount of work that you're supposed to put into your community. Right? 10% at the bare minimum. Though you're voting, if you don't believe it works, whatever, a shot in the dark is still a shot in the dark. That's my thinking. Right? That other 90% should be taken up by a lot of more community activism, or a lot more community organizations, or organizing within your own spaces. Right? For example, right, a Nonsense Creative Studio who operates within Brooklyn but also operates within the city, just created a Hurricane Melissa kind of drive, put up their own GoFundMe link. I've donated, a couple of friends have donated, and they've been able to raise so much first aid kits, batteries, etc., to go help Jamaica during this time. Now, that is a perfect example of grassroots work. The person that runs Anansi Simone, she took it upon herself to go create that, right? I have other friends as well that started a whole foundation and that did a back to school drive, right? There's a lot of things that you could take on a day-to-day for your person, or you could do on a day-to-day for your person to actually make up that 90% of the work you're supposed to be doing. Like people be like, oh, voting don't work, and they don't do nothing. That's my biggest problem. You cannot say voting don't work and then you personally don't do anything, right? Like there needs to be a push and pull. There needs to be a balance. And as I said, 10% of that is voting. That 90% needs to look like something else. It needs to, right? Because at this point, not only do our communities need it, but you might need it, right? Like community is community. This is not just this is for everybody, and for everybody's going to help everyone. So that's the way I think about it, because this government shutdown folding is like, it just lets me know that although I was dipping into politics a lot with the show, it's not the end all be all. It's not even close to the end all be all, right? Like we are future forward. We are Gen Z. We are thinking, how are we going to create solutions that looks outside of these apparatuses anyway? So them folding is the status quo. Business like usual. We're going to still keep doing the work that we do on a day-to-day to make sure that our communities look better, that our world looks better. And I'm going to keep screaming it from the treetops. Okay. That was a quick little government shutdown example. Oh, another example that I wanted to provide. Listen, this is a little bit more far removed. But when I was in school, I was a part of this club. I was president of it, called Gentlemen of Quality. GQ, shout out GQ. Yeah. And it was something that we were speaking about the whole time, right? I did this presentation called Don't Let Them Split the Gang Up, right? And it's basically saying a lot of us go into collegiate spaces, then go into corporate spaces, and then although we all have similar ideologies in the beginning, as we get farther out into those corporate spaces, our ideologies start to change. We might start going, playing pickleball. We might start playing a little bit of tennis, start going to the Hamptons a little bit. And, our optics change, our politics change a little bit. But where we started doesn't really change, right? And something during those conversations that happened was we started talking about clinics. A lot of us were pre-med. So the idea is like, all right, if we could have GQ, maybe we have HQ, something like that has health within it, and then we can create our own clinics. This is another example of Gen Z thinking of out the box. What can we do to support our communities? Of course, it's not, not reinventing the wheel, but what can we do to support our communities? And as a community, good, like-minded brothers that wants to do something else, that wants to push the envelope forward, and it looks something completely different. I don't know a lot of, granted, I'm not in the pre-med space. I don't know a lot of clinics that's owned by us, for us, etc. But we could do that. We could do that. We have the ability to do that. I have a platform here. If anybody wants to come on and speak about stuff like this, you have the platform. But this is what we need to be moving into, and pooling money, pooling resources, pooling know-how to get this stuff done. I mean, you don't need to start late. We are young now, but we got the information low key. Don't psych yourself out. Don't psych yourself out of the position. We have the information. Okay. So that's just a government shutdown folding, but again, that's 10%. 90% of the work needs to be day to day. What are you going to do? Try to figure out, even you can pause the episode right now and think about 3 things that you could do coming into the next year, 2026. Hello. Of what we could do. All right. Some more things before we get into Sudan. Let's do some little quick updates. This 50-year mortgage and the 15-year car loan. I've been watching some videos. I've been researching this a little bit, because all I do know is that when I was buying my car, and I financed it, so similar stuff that we're talking about. Financed it means I'm getting a loan. I was looking between the 4, 5, and 6 year loan. Now, knowing loans, when you bring it out longer maturation or longer expiration, whatever. When you bring it out longer, you're going to pay more in interest, right? The idea is that, like, all right, if you take that 6 year, you better be paying more on top of it to make sure that you don't pay that extra year of interest, okay? So Americans, hear me and hear me clearly. when they go from a 30-year mortgage to a 50-year mortgage, that means that you are going to be locked into a loan for 50 years unless you're paying it off more on top. 50 years. 50 years. Now, let me see if I can do this numbers off the top. If we do a $500,000 home, 10% of that $500,000, the down payment is $50,000. So a $450,000 loan. I think you pay about like $2,700 on a month to month with a 6% interest rate. That's a 30-year mortgage, $2,600. Let's say the 50-year mortgage, same $500,000, $450,000 loan, and the interest rate is like 6.7%, a little bit higher because it's a higher time frame, right? I think you only pay a $70 difference month to month comparatively from the 30-year mortgage to the 50-year mortgage. I am not lying. A $70 difference. It just lowers your monthly payment. Now, the interest that you pay on that home is about $500,000 on the 30-year mortgage, and the interest that you pay on the 50-year loan is about $1.1 million. Double. Which is why Americans need to get a little bit more financially literate, because when I speak about this is that this 30 to 50-year mortgage, this jump up, that 50-year mortgage is a scam, man. Do not get scammed into that. Think about that, right? Like, I'm 22. I think most people become ready to buy a home by like late 20s, probably early 30s. So let's say 30. If you buy a 50-year mortgage at 30, you're going to be paying that mortgage until you're 80 years old. 80 years old. Past 65, past 70, you're going to be paying that mortgage till you're 80. If you die before that, you're going to die with generational debt. Passing that along. That does not become an asset. Even if you live to 80, you then start to gain into that appreciation of the home, of that asset, once you get to pay it off. Once you pay it off at 80, so what? You get 5 years of that asset appreciating? Lock in. This ain't nothing. This is not no asset. That you are losing out on equity over that time. So it does not make sense. Now, the question would be, if it does not make sense, why do it? Why do it? Well, one, we have an affordability crisis. So ideally, in a lot of citizens' minds, now they're going to be able to get access to homes at a cheaper rate. But it's not really cheaper in the long term. It's only cheaper in the short term, month to month. So it's continuously training Americans to think that way, that month to month basis. But it's like, it's only lowering it by a marginal amount, but you're paying so much more in the back end. Scary. At the same time, while Gen Z and younger millennials already debating whether or not owning a home comparatively to renting is worth it. Because I can even think about being locked into an apartment or whatever for 5-10 years, let alone a home. But now you're saying 50 years to be locked into a home? What are we talking about? And this is not going to improve the affordability crisis when it comes to homes. I mean, it might. But the idea is that if you're going to get access to more, if you're giving people more access to get into homes, meaning that more people are going to buy, the people that's going to benefit this is the real estate apparatus, the investors, the lenders, the banks, because they're giving out more loans, they're doing more purchases and sales, which means that the demand for homes is going to go down and the supply is going to go down. The demand for supply is going down for homes, which means demand is going to go up, so prices are going to go up. That's pretty simple. So that's not going to fix the affordability crisis by giving a 50-year mortgage. That's insane, bro. That's insane to even think about. And for my Americans, my Gen Zs, listen up, man. Don't do it. Don't do it. Rent until you can, because a 50-year mortgage just doesn't sound correct. Locking your money up like that does not sound correct. Putting yourself in that amount of debt for that long is scary. It's scary. It's also scary on the corporate side as well, because, I think he was also floating, what do you call it? It's like when you migrate different interest rates, right? So like if you could have portable interest rates or portable mortgages or whatever, right? So if you have a 5% interest rate and you want to move, then you can take that 5% and then go buy another home with that 5%. Only problem is that you're just trading off balance sheet. Who's holding on to that interest rate, right? And if inflation rises up, then those banks are having that on their balance sheet. So I'm sorry if I'm getting too much into the weeds. Overall, it's just bad ideas. And to be honest, once I looked it up, they're not even proposing this. It's not real. Like, he spoke about it, but this is not this might not happen, right? Same thing when it comes to those $2,000 stimulus checks. Listen to me, America, Gen Z, listen up. $2,000 dividend checks from them tariffs. Tariffs have yet to yield significant amount of money, I guess, let alone not be able to pay for stimulus checks like this, right? The idea of the tariffs was supposed to be able to pay off our debt, right? Pay off our debt. By giving $2,000 to every American, what do you think does to that? What do you think that does to our debt? What do you think that does to inflation? Okay. Now, when I looked up the $2,000, the specifics is that it's supposed to directly go into your health savings account. Back up for me 1 minute, Gen Z. Did you not hear me 15 minutes ago? We were talking about healthcare, and they're talking about ACA subsidies and taking away ACA subsidies, Affordable Care Act subsidies, out of the big beautiful bill, and they just voted to go re-vote again in December, which is not going to happen. So they completely taken out the ACA subsidies out of the big beautiful bill, and they just voted to reopen the government, so it does not matter no more. Those subsidies are gone, and now he's talking about giving $2,000 to health savings accounts to every American. Oh, not high income Americans though, specifically. So $2,000 universal basic income into health savings accounts for every American, but yet he's taking away low income subsidies that helps Americans when it comes to the Affordable Care Act. So what happens when that medical bill goes above $2,000? My braces didn't cost $2,000. I know a lot of people that go through medical injuries don't cost no $2,000. I don't even know if the ambulance bill costs $2,000. Man, this is ridiculous. And also, this is not going to happen. Let's get this straight. This is also not going to happen. There's no actual. He spoke about it, but it does not necessarily mean that he spoke about this to the people that's actually going to get it done. So I'll be paying close attention to it, of course, because this is your main area to be listening to this stuff. This is your main spot. I got you. Don't worry. I lock into this. Okay. Other stuff within, I guess Trump and Epstein news and stuff like that. Or good to talk about Epstein, but Trump news, he's been working diligently to fight against SNAP being paid out. Luckily, the government is reopening, so that means SNAP will be paid out. But he's went to the Supreme Court for the last 2 weekends, on the weekends. So he's working overtime to make sure that the Supreme Court blocks the temporary aid that was getting put out for SNAP. So we understand who our president is, whatever. And another aspect of breaking news is that he's looking to force, this is from Politico, he's forcing SNAP recipients to reapply to get SNAP, basically. So it's basically to be able to rid out fraud. The idea is that every single SNAP recipient that has applied and that's been through the system is now going to have to reapply in order to get your SNAP. So it's just a weird place to put your criticism on. Like, SNAP is a weird spot to be digging through. I understand when it comes to like fraud and stuff like that definitely could be there, but it's like, why fight food insecurity? And we know that his conversation, his campaign is going to switch into affordability. It's going to have to, right? Because ultimately America is not that affordable for the average American, which is a problem. And he's going to have to come to terms with that once this economic data catches up, and they haven't been reporting for the last 2 months. Whatever. It's going to catch up, and he's going to have to switch his narrative to affordability. How can you switch your narrative to affordability and you've been attacking SNAP for the last 2 months? And now every SNAP recipient is going to have to reapply? Come on, man. Come on. All right, other news, and then we're going to get into Sudan. We flying, but we moving. I like this episode. Listen, a bunch of bombshell news articles have been dropping about Epstein and Trump's relation, and maybe even Trump and Bill Clinton's relations. I don't know. I don't care about that salacious stuff. Though the important stuff that's going on is that Adelita Grijalva, who is just sworn into Congress, was a deciding factor for the Epstein files to be released, and the deciding vote to make sure that the Epstein files can now be voted on to get released or whatever, right? There's a bunch of other hoops that needs to be jumped through in order for those Epstein files to actually be released. I'm not too convinced that they're going to release them, personally. I'm just reporting on it because I feel like this is good information for y'all to know, is that just a lot more emails are coming out. And at this point, it's not only pressuring Trump, because Trump has now asked the FBI to reopen an investigation on the Democrats and Epstein's involvements. So you can see him spiraling a little bit. The White House is spiraling a little bit about what's going on. I think it's all weird. It don't make no sense. At this point, release them, don't release them. Can we focus on the millions of Americans that need healthcare, that need food, and making this place a little bit more affordable? Or how about we pay down our debt? Fix the geopolitical, problems that's going on within the world. We just declared, Pete Hegseth is talking about, I guess, waging war on our hemisphere to rule out all the narco terrorists. Man, I know I'm just ringing out stuff. I'll talk about that maybe next week, but it's not really that deep. They just announced something. But we are living in weird times, and at times that sometimes it feels like something's covering up one another. So much information that's coming out, like water coming out the garden hose. Too much information coming out to flood. But maybe that's the reason. Maybe they're just trying to cover this up. Who knows? I mean, Epstein is just not on the top of my care list, to be honest. But you know what is getting closer? Sudan. Listen, let me play a little clip. This is horrific, and I'm actually sad that, one, it took me 16 episodes to get into a deep dive about this, and also I'm sad that Perspective hasn't really talked too much about it. I know we talked about it in our newsletter, but it's ridiculous. Here's the clip.
More people could have died there in 10 days than have died in the past 2 years of the war in Gaza.
These were words of the executive director of the Humanitarian Research Lab at Yale School of Public Health, Nathaniel Raymond, in an interview with Al Jazeera just last week. He was speaking about the fall of Al-Fashir, the capital of North Darfur, that was overrun by the paramilitary rapid support forces after over 550 days of siege. A siege that was followed by bloodletting on a scale unimaginable even by the grim standards of Sudan's civil war.
Okay. There's a lot of facts to cover in this ridiculous humanitarian crisis. And I definitely, first of all, want to say, if anybody knows more about this than me, of course, you have a platform here and we could talk about it. But first, Al-Fashir, which is the capital of North Darfur in Sudan, left. It was ravaged. They say over 60,000 plus has died in that city in just less than 10 days. Which means that that's Gaza numbers, which has happened over 2 years, but this has happened within 10 days, which has been alarming to me because it's been coming up on my social medias now. But that's because I've been looking for it a little bit more, because I've been looking to get into this conflict, which means that it's just not widely spoken about. If the same amount of numbers, if not more numbers, that's happening in Sudan is happening all around in other conflicts like Israel and Hamas, or Ukraine and Russia, then why isn't this being spoken about enough? So a little bit of background into the war. It's been going on since 2023. But this history has been going on since the first civil Sudanese war back in the early 2000s, late 19s. Now, this has been going on for a little bit of 2 years, and it's been estimates that it's over maybe close to 400,000 people have passed in the last 2 years just in those regions, right? But these estimates have come from different places, but most organizations, most hospitals, most civil rights activists in those places have been killed. And this war hasn't just been about mass killings as well. Mass killings are ridiculous, but this has been a war of sexual violence, high rates of sexual violence, rape, just mass killings, mass graves, butchering people, brutalism. This is a gruesome war that's happening. And when they talk about Al-Fashir going down, I mean, they killed every patient in a hospital and all the doctors in that hospital. They did not leave the city unravaged. Now, who's they? They is the RSF, Rapid Support Forces. They're going against the SAF, which is the Sudanese Armed Forces. The RSF is funded or backed by the UAE, United Arab Emirates. Why is that important? That's important because the RSF actually is formed from a couple of small militia groups that started during the first Sudanese war that went against and committed the genocide against the Darfur people. The Darfur people, not just Arabs, but it's an Arab state plus minorities, black Africans, etc. But that Darfur genocide was carried out on those Africans, non-Arab people. Now, the militia groups that was carrying out that during that time of the Sudanese rule, that's where the RSF has stemmed from, those little militia groups, and that's reported. So the RSF not only came from a genocidal group or genocidal militia, but is now taking out those actions against the people in Sudan, the people in Darfur, and it's widespread across multiple cities, and it's thousands of people, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that's reportedly being killed, and done through mass war crimes, hospitals being killed, babies being killed, children being killed. I mean, this is not done through the ways that typically war is accepted. Now, I don't accept death in any kind, but it's just gruesome. It's gruesome. And the reason why people say it's backed by the UAE, the RSF, is because this gruesome war is not a technologically advanced war. This is not Ukraine, Russia, where drones are being flown around. This is fought with a lot of basic material, basic equipment. And if money was to stop flowing towards this basic equipment, then a lot of reporters and estimates come is that this war might significantly slow down and or even stop. Right? Now, of course, there's different allied supports on both sides, but the RSF is being widely criticized for carrying out these mass war crimes comparatively to the SAF. The SAF has also done a egregious amount of crimes, but it's just not in the same vein as the RSF. And again, RSF is backed by the UAE and Abu Dhabi and a couple of other African states. It's just crazy. I mean, it's carrying out another genocide. Because as the RSF is going through these different cities, and of course this is just widespread, they're also carrying this out against the Darfur people again, the African people again. There's a couple of resources that I've linked down below to talk a little bit more about this issue, and I just wanted to bring some light to this because I haven't spoken about it, but I also didn't know the numbers. Like, they're saying 60,000 dead in the last 10 days. Why haven't I seen this on the Wall Street Journal? Why haven't I seen this on all my media? I follow every single media news outlet. Fox, CNN, Reuters. Where is this being spoken about? I've only seen it about the satellite images that's coming out, which is mass graves. But why didn't nobody say that there's estimated over 60,000 people dead in 10 days? The 60,000 dead Palestinians that we were talking about was carried out over 2 years. There's nations that's supporting this, and there's nations that's funding this. And even if the UAE, let's say the UAE is backing the RSF, paramilitary rapid support forces, there's only a couple of things that Western nations could do. Sanction. If the United States put some sanctions on UAE, who knows if this conflict would keep going on? Who knows? But nothing has been stirred up to try and to talk about it. And that's what the main point that this channel, I'm forgetting his name, but Warfront has been talking about, which I got a lot of my information from. But also there's a couple of people and a couple of articles that I've been researching to do this segment on. So yeah, that's it for my Sudan conversation and segment, I will be personally donating, and I'll put the link to donate in description, because this is insane. This is insane. And it needs to be widely spoken about. Let's talk markets. Let's talk personal finance. There's not much to talk about within markets, other than markets is just going through a lot of turmoil. They're trying to figure out whether this AI trade is going to continue or whether or not they want to pop the bubble. My thinking is, though, is that if the bubble were to be popped, they would have popped this without any conversation. Without any conversation, which just lets me know that there's probably a Christmas rally coming. And then whenever that happens, man, it's doomsday. I'm not saying it's doomsday. Let me back that up. Whenever that happens, uncertainty is at heights. Volatility is at heights. Because then we don't know where we're going to go after that when it comes to valuations, etc. I'm looking to start to de-risk. Meaning all of my AI positions or whatever, de-risking. All of my positions in general, de-risking. That's how I'm approaching going into this quarter 4, but quarter 1 season. Okay, a couple of personal finance questions I got to ask. Let me get this one. How do I actually decide between a high yield savings account, a Roth IRA, and a brokerage account? Okay, so a high yield savings account might give you a 3 to 4% average percentage yield. Is that what APY? 3 to 4% interest on the money that you have. That's pretty good, right? Like, I have a emergency savings account, and that emergency savings account is a high yield savings account. So I'm never going to touch that money. Why not let it appreciate 3 to 5%? But if I feel like I'm going to touch that money, it might just be in a regular Chase account. Now, a Roth IRA and a brokerage account, low key is it is the same thing. The Roth IRA is that for 60 years you should not take out of this, because you're going to be all this profits is going to be untaxed practically. It's an untaxed account, but you cannot take out until you're 60 or you're going to be taxed on it. In a regular IRA, you might be taxed on however your tax is set up, but you might be taxed on whatever single transaction or by the quarter or whatever. But that's how the differences are, is that a Roth IRA, you pay no taxes up until 60, but you're not touching it. So you might max it out after 6K. Like 6K a year, I think you have the ability to max it out each year. So you should be maxing that out first if you have the ability to, and then move into your brokerage account, your IRA. High yield savings account for me is just money that it's emergency money that you need to have liquid just in case. Liquid is you need to have on hand. You can send it to something just in case. With stocks, it might be Friday, so you might sell your stuff, but you might not be able to get your money out of your account until Tuesday or Monday. You see what I'm saying? So it's not as liquid, and that's the only kind of like dance that you need to have between those. Now, personally, I am young. And this is not financial advice. I am young. I'm going to be aggressive with my investments. That's my bottom line. I'm going to be aggressive with my investments. Why? Because if this money burns, God forbid, it's not like I'm missing it too much. And a lot of Gen Z have to realize that, like, yeah, I know we struggling at times. Don't get me wrong, we struggling at times, but we also enjoying ourselves. So if you can rein in a little bit of that enjoyment and use that for your investments and see how you could, I'm not telling y'all to go into no mutual fund, man. Like, if you're a Gen Z and in a mutual fund, what are we doing? What are we doing? God forbid. Let me not say that. That's not good advice. You could be in a mutual fund, of course. It's just spread out, and it's just less risk, but it's less return. If you're young, you want high return, and you could risk it a little bit more, because that money, although it may feel like you need it, you probably don't, because you have another 15, 20 years of earning potential. And then you have another 30 years on top of that of earning potential. You see what I'm saying? So in the grand scheme of things, is that money going to matter? Probably not. Which is why when I was in college, that money was nothing. That money was nothing, because that earning potential is still high when you get out. I could still try to go make $1 after the fact, but that $300 that might have been sitting in my account, that might have been spent on food, was just thrown off into my investment account. And now I'm able to be a little more aggressive because I would have spent that $300 on food. You see what I'm saying? So deciding between a high yield savings account, a Roth IRA, or a brokerage account. A Roth IRA, I say max that out if you can, because untaxed money, and that's just saving up for your retirement. An IRA, you might want to be a little more aggressive. I play my options within it. And that IRA is a regular brokerage account that you could trade stocks on, a bank account for stocks. And a high yield savings account is for money that you need to have liquid just in case, an emergency savings account. You're going to collect 3 to 4% interest on it, and it's going to do pretty well. But it's not going to look at all similar to your brokerage account or your Roth IRA account, because you might be making, let's say, 60% on your money for the year in that brokerage account, and maybe 30% in the Roth IRA. So 3% to 30% to 40%. And for, let's say, for my example, if my IRA, I think I'm hitting like 80%. I hit 80% last year. So 80% to 30% in the Roth IRA to 3% in the high yield savings account. It's just how you want to divvy those up. It's personal to you. It's not financial advice. Okay. One more question. I like this. Let's see. If rate cuts are coming, this is a good question for my investors out there. If rate cuts are coming, should I lock in long-term investments now or wait for the market dip? Great question. Now, it's not financial advice. Personally, I always wait for a market dip. I will always wait for a market dip. And this is my philosophy when it comes to just trades, et cetera, and prices, is that I trust that this stock will get to my price, or will come back to whatever my price is, my stock price, versus it hitting my stop loss. Me having a stop loss, it's snacking that stop loss, and now I'm out or whatever. That's for trading specifically. But overall, I'm saying that you think that stock goes up so much, you think that stock goes down so much, that stock will return to that middle more than not. And what I do know in the markets is that there will be down months, there will be down days, and you will have opportunities to get in. But if you're impatient, that's when they strike. That's when the market gets you. That's when they look for you, is because you're being impatient. You might buy in a little bit too early, or might be too late, and right then, that's when they smack you out. That's when the market gets you, because you weren't being patient enough. Let's say you said you wanted to wait for a 20% dip in the video before you got in. Or that might be a lot. A 10% dip in the video, 5% dip in the video before you got in. Now, granted, it might take you a couple months, and especially if you're in a bull run, but I really do believe that it will still get down, even despite rate cuts are coming. I mean, the way that the market prices stuff in is 6 months ahead anyway, right? So rate cuts were already priced in months ago. And yes, that the rates are coming down. If anybody does not know, I think I explained this last episode, but I'll do it again. Fed funds or rates is just how much it costs for banks to lend out, how much it costs for people to borrow money, right? If interest rates come down, it's cheaper for people to buy. Wow. If interest rates come down and it's cheaper for people to borrow money, then more money is in circulation. More people are buying, more corporations are buying. They might be hiring more people, et cetera, et cetera. You see what happens. So the idea is that the economy is going to spur. Does not necessarily mean that the market is going to run. Yes, companies might free up a little more cash flow. They might be able to buy more and invest more into R&D, et cetera. Doesn't mean that these companies are going to yield those results instantly. And it also doesn't mean that all the other economic factors that are kicking in at the same time doesn't push into market sentiment, right? Economic factors being, labor market down, or inflation still going up, or inflation above 2%, right? Like, these are economic factors that still might be keeping people away from the market. So it doesn't mean that your investments are going to skyrocket. It does not mean that. So be careful. I wait for dips every single time. That's my personal assessment. Okay. Well, that's my little market update. I mean, other than that, I told you about, Warner Bros. Did I tell you about, Warner Bros. Being bought up by Netflix, Paramount, Skydance, etc.? But I don't know if y'all care about that. But basically, legacy media continuously, dying. And it's showcasing that within their studios, showcasing that within their ratings and stuff like that. But streaming obviously is continuously taking over. Paramount has their Paramount Plus. Netflix has Netflix, of course. And Warner, I believe, was HBO. But Max is just not doing enough. It's not. So they're going to have to sell, and they're looking to sell by Christmas time. And these companies that I listed are looking to buy. So very interesting time. This is right after the Skydance deal that Skydance bought Paramount, $6 billion, Larry Ellison. And this is just more of consolidation within the space. Because if Skydance and Paramount buys Warner Bros. And all the studios and all that stuff, seems like a lot of consolidation of our media, which means that there's only a couple of 4 people, 5 people that's controlling what everybody sees on their screen. And that's why we have Gen Z media right here to, giving y'all the real. Okay. With that, I gotta go. I have an alumni dinner to get to. I hope y'all weeks have been good. This was a great episode. Put your comments down in the comments below. Questions, concerns, maybe some takes. You think I'm off about something? Put it out in the comments. But I'll be doing a lot of this research, man. I'll be really researching this. So check out the resources in the description to go read a little bit more to see if I missed anything. Of course, I'm human. With that, though, I love y'all. Gen Z, perspective. Oh, I didn't even say shout out perspective. Listen. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, we're everywhere. Shout out Perspective. Go check us out. We talk about real world topics, making real world dense topics more accessible, more understandable, breaking it down into layman's terms. Some of the stuff is really not that hard to get. They just make it hard to understand by the language that they're using. And what I'm trying to do and what Perspective is trying to do is just lower that language because sometimes it's just inaccessible, and we trying to give y'all the real message, so you can make your own perspective. Hold on. Be perceptive to what? Build perspective. With that, I love y'all. Gen Z, what's up? Saadiq, I'm out, man. Catch my links in the description.